Hey, how's it going, guys? And today I wanted to talk about the Curiosity Shop and more so how to think about items in general in Deadlock, how to read their descriptions, when to think about counter buying versus certain heroes or certain compositions, active versus passive items, what are investment bonuses, and just all sorts of stuff related to items in Deadlock. So let's go ahead and get straight into it. So quick overview of items in Deadlock. You have three categories, gun, vitality, and spirit. And when you buy from a certain category, let's say I buy spirit, I buy extra spirit, mystic burst, you can see you have investment bonuses down here. So your spirit power for spirit items increases as the more money you spend on spirit items. So if you spend a lot more money, you get more. This decreases as you spend more and more money. So near the top, it doesn't matter as much, as you can see. But near the bottom, it's a pretty decent increase. And same thing for gun, and same thing for vitality as well. The interesting thing is, too, at 4.8k souls, you'll see a little star next to it. And let's see if I buy some more items. And there we go. I hit that 4.8k. This is what you'll sometimes be referred to as the 4.8k investment spike. This is a big power spike because you see we're jumping from 19 all the way up to 38 spirit power and just, what is that, 1600 souls. So it's a big power spike, and you want to think about this when looking at builds and your laning phase. When are you going to hit that 4.8 power spike? Because that's going to be a big power spike for your character overall. So something to keep in mind. And with builds and stuff, you'll notice that sometimes they're formatted in a way where you're going to hit that 4.8k exactly. So this one by Cosmetical is a great one to show that. So this one, you just buy all this. It doesn't quite hit it exactly, but it gets you right over the 4.8k with items that you want for this character. So now I wanted to talk about how to read item descriptions in general in Deadlock. So there's a lot going on with item descriptions in Deadlock. There's a lot of like little stats and stuff that you can care about. But I wanted to talk about how you should think about this as a beginner. So first off, I will say if you're a very, very new beginner to Deadlock, let's say less than 50 hours and stuff, you might not even have to care about items too much. Just look for a decent build, look for a top rated build, pick it, and just kind of buy, whatever. You don't have to think about items too much. But as you get more and more experience in Deadlock, you're starting to understand stuff a little more. You're starting to understand macro and how stuff works and kind of the flow of the game. You'll definitely want to understand what items at least generally do. And that's where I think this can be helpful for some people. So what I would say is don't worry about every little stat on every little item. Sometimes it can be important. But an example of this that I want to show is Superior Cooldown, for example. This is generally an ability you buy on characters you want less cooldown on all their abilities. Maybe there's one ability you want it especially on, like Pocket's ult, but generally you just want to get all your cooldowns down. You also have 4+ for out of combat region. The out of combat region doesn't really matter. Sure, it's a nice to have, but that's not really the reason you're buying it. And there's kind of a lot of items like this. So just think about why you're buying the item. I'll give another example. Knockdown. You have plus 75 bonus health and plus 6 ability range. Again, you're probably not buying it. That's not the reason you're buying it. You're probably buying it because there's a Vindicta on the team, or you just want to knock down for like 7 lash. You're probably not buying it for those two little stats. And the reason I'm saying this is when you're focusing on items, just don't worry about memorizing all the little stats and stuff. That's not going to help you a ton. I don't remember that Disarming has plus 75 bonus health. That's not something I remember. All I know is, like, if I want to buy Disarming Hex to disarm someone, I buy it. I don't care about that stat. So just don't overthink things too much and don't worry about all the little stats. Sometimes they can be useful, but at the beginning especially, I wouldn't worry too much about them. I would worry more so about what is the main reason I'm buying this? What is the main reason that I want this? And then you buy it for that reason. And as you get better and better at the game, you could pay attention more to those small little things as well. All right, another thing I wanted to talk about is active versus passive items. So active items are things that go down in this toolbar right here, and you actually have to press a button to activate them. So they're not activated automatically. You actually have to manually activate them. So Cold Front, you just press this and it casts a little spell that does damage and movement slow. So one thing I would say is I see a lot of people being afraid to use active items because, hey, it's another button you have to actually press. Just don't be scared to use them. You don't have to use them right off the bat, But as you play more and more games of Deadlock, you'll notice some of the active items are very, very strong and you'll definitely want to use them. So don't be scared of buying active items. And a lot of the active items aren't even that difficult to use. You just press it when you're fighting, or maybe Fleet Foot when you just want to go faster or stuff. That's probably one of the easier ones to use. But yeah, just don't be scared to use them. I see a lot of people kind of shy away from them, but really they're not that difficult to use. So at least give them a try and see if you're able to use them. All right, so now I kind of wanted to talk about my flow of buying stuff. So when I first get a build, I kind of like to think of what is my core that I'm buying no matter what, and what is my kind of extra stuff that's kind of optional or is going to be like my counter buy slots, my maybe extra armor slots, that type of thing. So this, for example, like the early game on Pocket, I'm pretty much always buying this stuff no matter what every game. Some people might not, but most of the time I play Pocket, and Pocket's not my main. He's a character I just play sometimes, so maybe I don't know the best build on him. But then some stuff even down here in the core, I think is kind of optional. Like Diviner's Kevlar, especially if it's not a super long game, I don't really buy that until super late, or I might buy something over here instead. Now, how do you know what's core versus optional? I think that's something that if you're new to the game, you might have to just, focus on the build more so, pick a good build and stuff and have it do it for you. Once you get more knowledge on the game and items, you can kind of understand what is more core to your hero and what you can opt out of and what's not super important and what you can buy later on. And like I said, I'm not a main on Pocket, so maybe this isn't the best example, but I do play Pocket sometimes, so this is just an example. But I do like this build because of how it's laid out and stuff. All right, so another thing I wanted to talk about is when to switch up what you're buying. Like when to say like, oh, I was going to buy this, but I kind of want to buy something else ahead of that. I think there's a couple reasons for this. Like one is, what is the enemy's team composition? What type of damage are they dealing? Do they have any items or spells that make it really difficult for you to play or do something to your character, like CC them or do a lot of damage to them that you need to account for? So I think one example of this that's pretty easy to understand is when Bebop was really strong for a bit, you might want Dispel Magic, or it used to be called Debuff Remover, to just remove his bomb. There's all sorts of counter buys like this, like Metal Skin for maybe a haze. Now I could make a whole video on directly counter buys and what to go into for that and what to actually buy against certain things. This video is not really for that. I just think definitely pay attention to your team's composition, their composition, what items your team has, and the overall kind of flow of the game. Let's say, your team might really need a knockdown. No one else is buying it. Maybe you buy a knockdown. Or another good example of this is healing reduction. So let's say, they have a super fed Victor or something. You might want to go Healbane, or maybe it's later in the game. You want to go Spirit Burn or Inhibitor, depending on your character. But yeah, I think the important thing is keep in mind the general composition of, your team, their items, your team's items, and that type of thing. You don't have to counter buy perfectly early on. As you play more and more games, you're going to get used to it overall. So don't worry about it too much if you're new and it seems very complicated. All right, finally, I wanted to talk about when to sell items versus when to just buy stat locked items. So by stat locked items, I mean you don't have any flex slots available, but you have some of these upgrade items. So it might not be the best item to buy, but you can do it without selling anything. So I wanted to talk about when to buy versus sell. All right, I think this kind of goes back to the core versus extra items in the game. So I'm on Moe and Krill now. I play Moe and Krill a decent amount. I like this build for the most part. And I know there's some stuff that's optional in this build versus what I want to keep my whole game. So a couple things. Very, very late game, I know I can sell Mystic Burst. It just adds a bit of extra damage. It's not going to be the end of the world if I don't have it super late game. And there's other items I might want over it. So I have the option of selling this. And I think that's good to know ahead of time, because when you're in the moment, you don't want to sell something that actually might be helpful, even though it's a cheaper item. So I think it's good to think through what you kind of sell ahead of time. And as you can see right now, I'm full on items right now, and I can actually upgrade to Juggernaut. So this would be upgrading, when you're stat locked, just upgrade it, and it's not going to take up another slot at all. I can just do that without selling anything. But let's say the enemy team is dealing a ton of spirit damage, like they're all spirit. And I'm not going to get much out of Juggernaut there. That's not really the item I want to buy, but I'm full on items. In that case, I'm just gonna, buy Spellbreaker or something, sell Mystic Burst. Sure, it's a bit less damage I'm doing on Burst, but that's an 800 item. At this point, it's very late game. I don't really care about that. As a new player, don't be scared to sell items, especially the cheaper ones, and especially late game, because by the time late game comes around, you just don't need some of these early game items anymore, and you're much better off, instead of upgrading, buying the exact item you actually need for your specific situation. All right, so that is going to be it for this video. Let me know what you guys think. I could make a ton of more videos on items in general. I think we're going to make a video on every item for each category and kind of explaining every item. So let me know if you want to see that. And yeah, let me know if this was helpful. I plan on making more educational videos in the future. So thank you so much, and I'll catch you later. Peace.